You do not bomb the Japanese home islands in daylight. That was the rule. For 3 years, Imperial Japan believed its homeland sat behind a shield of distance and altitude. The Pacific was too vast. The American bombers were too short-legged. Even if an enemy aircraft reached Tokyo, Japanese fighters would claw it out of the sky before it could strike with precision. The Army and Navy General Staff repeated it like doctrine: Japan is an unsinkable aircraft carrier. The Emperor's cities are beyond reach. They had watched B-17s and B-24s struggle in China. They had seen medium bombers harass their outer islands. But no aircraft could carry 5 tons of bombs more than 3,000 miles, cruise above 30,000 feet, and return home safely. No engine could sustain that altitude with a full bomb load. No crew could survive the cold, thin air for hours on end. It was impossible. And impossible was comforting. But in 1944, one aircraft, and one commander determined to use it exactly as designed, changed everything. Colonel Haywood Shepard Hansel Jr. was 41 years old in 1944. He is not a reckless fighter ace. He is not a swaggering combat celebrity. He is a planner. A believer in doctrine. A quiet, precise architect of air power. Before the war, he helped write the Air War Plans Division strategy, the blueprint arguing that strategic bombing can cripple an industrial nation without invading it. He believes in altitude, precision, and daylight accuracy. Not terror. Not area destruction. Precision. Now he commands the XXI Bomber Command from the Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, captured at staggering cost in mid-1944. Nearly 6,000 Americans died taking Saipan alone. Why? Because from those islands, Japan finally falls within reach. And waiting on those coral runways is the most advanced bomber ever built, the Boeing B-29 Superfortress. 4 Wright R-3350 engines. Each pushing 2,200 horsepower. A pressurized cabin, unheard of in bombers. Remote-controlled gun turrets linked to analog computers. A range exceeding 3,200 miles. A service ceiling above 31,000 feet. At that altitude, the air is razor-thin. Temperatures drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Frost creeps along cockpit glass. Your breath crystallizes. Japanese interceptors, the Ki-43 Oscars, the Ki-44 Tojos, struggle above 25,000 feet. Their engines gasp. Their rate of climb collapses. Hansel knows this. Japan does not fully grasp it yet. The first B-29 raids from China in early 1944 were limited and costly. Maintenance failures plagued the new aircraft. Engines overheat. Crews fight teething problems. Japanese commanders conclude the Superfortress is overhyped. Overcomplicated. Vulnerable. They are wrong. By November 1944, over 100 B-29s sat on Tinian and Saipan. Runways stretch 8,500 feet long. Fuel tanks are full. Bomb bays are loaded with 500-pound high-explosive bombs. Hansel studies Tokyo on reconnaissance photographs. Aircraft factories. Engine plants. Dockyards. Targets selected not for terror, but for industrial paralysis. On November 24, 1944, he ordered the first major strike on Tokyo from the Marianas. The rule says Japan cannot be bombed in daylight from 30,000 feet. Hansel intends to break that rule. Altitude, 30,000 feet. Bomb release interval, every 60 feet. You hold steady. Anti-aircraft fire blossoms below, black puffs at 25,000 feet. Too low. Shells burst beneath you. Japanese fighters finally reach altitude. They approach from 6 o'clock low. But they cannot linger. Their engines sputter at this height. Climb rate vanishes. They fire brief bursts. Some rounds strike fuselages. A few B-29s catch fire. One bomber loses an engine. Then another. She drops out of formation. Below 28,000 feet, fighters swarm her. Cannons flash. Aluminum tears. She falls. But the main formation holds. Bombs fall. 1,000 pounds. 500 pounds. Hundreds of them. 30 seconds. 40. The city trembles. Smoke rises through cloud layers. And then the formation turns for home. 7 more hours over water. Fuel margins tight. Engines are still temperamental. On the return, mechanical failures claimed more aircraft than enemy fire. Of the 111 launched, 88 bombed the target. 24 are lost to combat and accidents combined. Japan claims dozens were shot down. But they cannot deny the truth. Tokyo has been struck in daylight from beyond interception range. And this is only the beginning. In December 1944, raids continued. December 3rd. December 13th. December 27th. Japanese engineers attempt countermeasures. High-altitude modifications. Emergency fighter prototypes. But production lags. Fuel shortages worsen. You are a Japanese air defense commander in Tokyo. Radar reports contacts at 30,000 feet again. You send FIU wake before dawn on Saipan. Engines cough to life in the humid darkness. 4 engines per aircraft. 111 aircraft scheduled. Nearly 1,000 airmen climbed aboard. The runway trembles as 140,000 pounds of aluminum and fuel lurch forward. Takeoff speed, 160 miles per hour. The aircraft shudders. Wheels lift. One after another. The largest bomber formation in history rises into Pacific skies. 7 hours to target. You climb to 30,000 feet. The ocean disappears beneath cloud layers. The temperature drops. Frost forms along fuselage seams. Oxygen masks press tight against faces. Over Japan, radar stations detect them. At first, confusion. 30,000 feet? Impossible. Japanese fighters scramble. Ki-44 Tojos claw upward. Pilots strain. Engines scream. Superchargers whine. Altitude, 20,000 feet. Still climbing. 25,000. The B-29s continue higher. 28,000, 30,000. The air grows thin. Gunners sit inside pressurized compartments, controlled remotely, their sights stabilized by computing fire control systems. No open-waist gunners freezing in the slipstream. No frostbitten fingers on triggers. Tokyo appears through scattered clouds. Hansel's crews begin bomb runs. Bomb bay doors open. Cold air floods in. Aiming point, Musashino aircraft engine plant. Bombardiers lie prone over the Norden site. Speed, 220 miles per hour. Tears. They climb. 18,000, 22,000. 26,000. Engines overheat. Some reach altitude. They fire upward. A few B-29s fall in flames. But most pass overhead untouched. And then came January 27, 1945. B-29s strike Tokyo again. 73 bombers hit the city. Interception attempts intensify. Japanese pilots ram bombers in desperation, body against aluminum at 300 miles per hour. One pilot collides mid-air. Both aircraft disintegrate. That is how high the stakes have risen. And then a revelation spreads through Japanese command: high-altitude precision bombing is not a fluke. It is sustained. Industrial targets suffer repeated damage. Factories slow production. Morale trembles. At this moment, it becomes clear. The superfortress is not a propaganda machine. It is an untouchable platform. If you find this kind of untold military detail as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of strategic genius and sacrifice deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help ensure they aren't forgotten. But the story does not end here. Because altitude is not the only weapon. In March 1945, under new Commander General Curtis LeMay, tactics change. Bomb loads shift to incendiaries. Altitudes drop. Precision gives way to devastation. But that pivot only happens because Hansel proved something first: Japan can be reached. Repeatedly. Systematically. From above 30,000 feet. The psychological barrier shatters before the physical one does. And Japan knows it. What they did not know in 1943 was that by late 1944, the distance that protected them had evaporated. By summer 1945, more than 3,900 B-29 sorties per month struck the home islands. Oil refineries burn. Aircraft plants slow. Rail yards choke with wreckage. Japanese fighter production struggles to keep pace. Fuel shortages worsen because tankers lie at the bottom of the Pacific, victims of American submarines. High-altitude interception programs fail to produce a decisive counter. And then, in August 1945, two specially modified B-29s, Enola Gay and Boxcar, delivered weapons that ended the war. The aircraft that once seemed unreachable now carries the most destructive force in history. The true impact of that first November raid would not be fully understood until the war's final days. The rule had been broken. Japan was no longer untouchable. Colonel Haywood Hansel did not become the most famous bomber commander of the war. He was replaced in January 1945, criticized for limited early results and strict adherence to precision doctrine. History remembers LeMay's firebombing more vividly. But Hansel proved the concept. He demonstrated that 30,000 feet over Tokyo was survivable, repeatable, sustainable. He died in 1988 at age 81. Thousands of B-29 crewmen returned home after missions that lasted 14 hours, flown in freezing air above flak and fighters. More than 20,000 American airmen died in the strategic bombing campaign against Japan. On the ground, Japanese civilians endured destruction that reshapes their nation forever. To this day, the silhouette of the B-29 remains unmistakable: long wings, 4 engines, pressurized fuselage. It represents the moment distance ceased to matter. Why does this story matter now? Because technological superiority changes assumptions before it changes outcomes. Because belief systems collapse before empires do. And because history often remembers the final blow, but forgets the moment the shield first cracked. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state, and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Colonel Haywood Hansel and the thousands of B-29 airmen do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.